Stop waiting. Start becoming. Welcome to Becoming with Beck, the podcast for those ready to shift their mindset, lead themselves, and manifest intentionally. If you know you're meant for more, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Hello and welcome back to Becoming with Beck. I'm your host, Beck Robinson, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, I just want to acknowledge that yes, a podcast episode did not go out last week. I would record these episodes on the days that my daughter is at daycare, which is now the days that I'm working. And I'm just trying to navigate how I'm going to go about recording these podcasts on the weeks that I'm working from home, which is only every third week. So if an episode doesn't go up, don't stress, it's coming. I'm just navigating this new era of my life. Now, something hit me recently that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. I've started delving deep into the world of manifestation this year. I've been reading books, studying the science, learning the techniques, and building practices around all of it. And the more I've learned, the more I keep coming back to this thought. I've already been doing this long before I had a name for any of it. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you probably were too. Today's episode is a little different. I'm not going to be teaching you a framework or walking you through a concept. Instead, I want to share my story, the real one, the before I knew what manifestation was version of my life, where I was instinctively doing things that I now understand to be some of the most powerful techniques in this space. Because I think there's something really important in recognizing that this isn't new. That some part of you already knows how to do this, that the version of you who has always been quietly reaching toward the goal you wanted, she knew something. Let's talk about it. I want to take you back to a version of me that didn't know words like law of assumption or mental rehearsal or embodiment. A version of me who hadn't read Neville Goddard or Joe Dispenza or any of it. But here's what I knew. Instinctively, almost without thinking about it, I knew how to feel my way into a future that I hadn't yet lived. I didn't call it manifestation. I probably would have called it dreaming or hoping or just being a bit extra about things I wanted. But looking back now with everything I know, what I was doing was extraordinarily aligned with the science and the spiritual frameworks that I've studied deeply. And I think that's so true for many of us. We arrive at this work and think we're starting from scratch, that we have to learn something entirely new. But actually, so often we're just learning the language for something we've always known in our bones. You don't find manifestation, you remember it. So let me walk you through some specific examples from my own life, and then I'm going to show you exactly what was happening beneath the surface through the lens of the science and the philosophy I now understand. So let's talk about my car. Once upon a time, my vision board consisted of goals I wanted to achieve written on a mirror with a whiteboard marker, and one of those goals was a four-wheel drive ute. So I wrote a Facebook post to my friends where I was asking for recommendations or thoughts on two different utes to decide which one I would eventually buy. I got feedback on one specific ute, and when I decided I would buy that car one day, that was essentially me placing an order with the universe. From then on, I would often see this car on the roads and I would admire it while imagining having one of my own. So when it came time for me to commit to purchasing, what did I do? I went and test drove it. I sat in the passenger seat. I felt the steering wheel underneath my hands. I noticed the smell of the interior, the way the seat held me, what it felt like to accelerate. I drove it through streets I recognized, and I let myself fully inhabit the experience of someone who drove that car. And from there, I would continue to visualize this experience of driving this car. And what I was actually doing was one of the most powerful manifestation techniques there is. Neville Goddard called it living in the end. Joe Dispenza calls it mental and sensory rehearsal. I just call it a test drive. The science behind this is fascinating. When you have a vivid, emotionally engaged, multi-sensory experience, even one that isn't real yet, your brain and nervous system respond as if it is real. You produce the same neurochemistry. You activate the same neural networks. You begin to condition your body to the same emotional state of someone who already has what you want. And your reticular activating system, the filter in your brain that decides what's worth paying attention to or what you can perceive as the algorithm, starts to orient toward that reality. You start to notice pathways and opportunities you genuinely couldn't see before because your brain wasn't primed for them. And I didn't know any of that when I was sitting in that car. I just knew it felt important to really feel it. And it turns out that feeling was the whole point. Now, this one is close to my heart. Before I had my baby, there was a period where I would take my dogs for a walk on my lunch break when I was working from home, and I would imagine vividly, consistently, with genuine feeling, pushing a pram. I would almost feel the weight of it in my hands. I'd picture my surroundings, the neighborhood, the dogs walking alongside. I'd imagine the version of me who was a mum, walking her baby, starting or going about her day. I wasn't doing formal visualization. I wasn't sitting in meditation. I was just walking my dogs and letting my mind go somewhere it really wanted to go. But what I was doing, and I can see this so clearly now, was rehearsing an identity, not just a circumstance. I wasn't just thinking, I want a baby. I was feeling what it would be like to be a mother, to live that day, to be that version of myself. This is the distinction that changes everything. Manifestation isn't about wanting something, it's about becoming the person who already has it. Joe Dispenza talks about this at length, the difference between thinking about a desired reality from the outside and thinking from within it. When you're observing your future, you're in a state of wanting, which actually signals to your brain that the thing is absent. When you step inside the experience and feel it from the first person, you begin to close that gap neurologically and emotionally. My walks with my dogs were, without me knowing it, daily identity rehearsals, daily embodiment practices. I was becoming a mother long before I was one. Now, my husband and I were at a stage where we were planning to build our home, and long before the plans were finalized, long before the slab was poured, I was walking through the display home, and not in the way that most people do. Not with a clipboard, comparing specifications and checking off features. I was walking through this home as if it were mine. I was walking into the pantry and imagining stocking it. I was standing in the master bedroom and feeling what it would be like to wake up there. I was running my hand along the benchtop and thinking, this is what home feels like. I was doing this deliberately and instinctively at the same time. Something in me knew that I needed to feel it, not just see it. What I now understand is that I was using sensory immersion to anchor a new identity in my nervous system. Every sense I engaged, the smell of the display home, the feel of the surfaces, the visual detail of the spaces, were sending signals to my brain that said, this is real, this is familiar, this is home. The more real you make something feel in your body before it exists in your life, the more your nervous system begins to treat it as the baseline, as the expected reality. Neville Goddard wrote extensively about the importance of feeling as the secret, not visualization alone, but the feeling that the wish has been fulfilled. He called it the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and that's exactly what I was generating walking through those rooms. I wasn't imagining having a house one day. I was feeling like I already did, and that is a profoundly different neurological and emotional experience. Now, this one might be my favorite example because it's so simple yet so perfectly aligned with everything I now know about how manifestation actually works. Before we moved, I would drive to and walk through the suburb where we were going to live. We would go to the cafe for breakfast and the local pub for lunch. I'd figure out where I'd walk in my mornings. I'd drive through the suburb and feel what it was going to be like to live here. I was doing something that sounds ridiculously simple, but it is actually a masterclass in embodied manifestation. I was collapsing the distance between my current reality and my desired one. I was removing the psychological gap of that's a future thing and replacing it with the felt sense of this is already mine. In quantum terms, and yes, we're going there, I was collapsing the wave function. I was taking a potential reality and through my observation and emotional engagement with it, beginning to crystallize it into form. I was also, practically speaking, building a neural map of my new life. My brain was starting to store memories of that suburb, real sensory memories, so that when we actually moved there, it didn't feel foreign. It felt like coming home, because in some very real neurological sense, I had already been there hundreds of times. So why am I telling you all of this? Not to impress you with how much I've manifested. Honestly, that's not the point at all. I'm telling you this because I think one of the biggest blocks people have when they come to this work is the belief that they have to learn something completely foreign. That manifestation is the exotic, complicated, out there practice that is very far removed from their normal life. But what if it isn't? What if you've been doing versions of this your whole life, just without the language, just without the awareness, just without the intention? The most powerful manifestation practice is the one you actually do. And often that's the one that already feels natural to you. Think about the things you've done in your own life. The times you've let yourself really imagine something, really feel into it, really step inside it before it was yours. The time you've walked through a house, you've test driven a car, you've wandered through a neighborhood, you held a vision so clearly in your mind that it almost felt like a memory. Those weren't idle daydreams. They were manifestation practices. You just didn't have the word for them. And now that you do, now that you understand the neuroscience, the neuroplasticity, the emotional conditioning, the identity rehearsal that underpins all of it, you can do it consciously, deliberately, and consistently. You can take what your intuition already knew and give it the full power of your awareness. That's what this work is really about. Not learning something new from scratch, remembering what you've always known and choosing to do it on purpose. I would love to know, does any of this resonate with you? Have you had any moments in your own life where you look back and think, I was doing that too? If you have, I genuinely want to hear about it. Come find me on Instagram at Becoming with Beck and tell me your version of this story. Because I think there is something so powerful about recognizing and naming what you've always been capable of. And if you're newer to this work and you're just beginning to explore what manifestation actually means, I hope today gave you permission to trust yourself a little more, to trust that something in you already knows the way, that the reaching you've always done toward the life you want wasn't naive or foolish. It was wisdom. It was instinct. It was you becoming before you even had the word for it. Thank you so much for being here today. If this episode meant something to you, please share it. You never know who needs to hear that they've been doing this all along. And be sure to follow and leave a review as it really supports my podcast. I will see you in the next episode.